Coloradans are crowdsourcing unemployment benefit advice because the state system is still such a mess.
Negative money, no money for food.
With vaccine choices growing, you're asking, do you have a choice as to which one you get? The governor's hard line against priority vaccinations for the homeless continues, with new reasoning today. A Coloradan on Capitol Hill had even his opponents praising him for his performance today.
Presidents can't inflame insurrection in their final weeks and then walk away like nothing happened.
And a vaccine lesson learned from rural Colorado. Sometimes it just takes one woman to step up. That's next. For a lot of reasons, Colorado's unemployment system right now is an embarrassment. People are so desperate to get help from the state and are having so little luck getting it month after month, they are now turning to unofficial sources of unemployment expertise, like a growing Facebook group that's people offering amateur advice for Coloradans who cannot get through to the unemployment professionals at the state. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
From here on out, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Jody Camarillo makes the face so many are faced with. She's among the Coloradans waiting for her regular unemployment, along with those waiting for pandemic relief.
Negative money, no money for food. I took out a loan to cover my expenses in the meantime, thinking that 3 weeks would be long enough to get paid. And obviously it wasn't.
Hold on to your seats. Her $1,300 loan, if she keeps it for 6 months, will amount to her paying $6,000 in interest.
Oh, no, I took out a high interest web loan. I don't know if I would have been able to get a loan through a bank.
Almost $200 payments each week.
My goal was to pay it off before the first payment was due, and then I would only have one small interest payment afterwards. They're actually very good to work with, even though they're charging you a fortune in interest.
Jody is just one example of someone struggling with a system meant for people who are struggling, which is where this Colorado Unemployment Q&A Facebook page with 7,200 members comes in.
It's a full-time job. I often log at least 8 hours a day.
Moderating this Facebook group pays Erin Joy Swank nothing. As a theater worker with on and off work, she knows her way around the unemployment system.
We're doing the communicating because CDLE isn't.
While this page can be helpful for multiple people with the same unemployment questions, a recent post required extra special attention.
I don't know how close they were coming to it, but someone said suicide was the only answer. And I personally was involved in getting that person help. They have lots of people checking in on them, and they have thanked everybody for their concern.
It's the community of the group that Erin pointed out, the small victories that may not seem like much, like simply helping someone through one step of the unemployment website.
Okay, so-and-so, did you see that pop up? Oh, no, I didn't. So she went back, I got the button. Yay, thank you so much, guys. You know, so those little things are success stories. I don't care. They may not have gotten the money yet, but they wouldn't have known exactly how to do it if they hadn't been for our group.
I have heard a lot of stories today. I talked with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, and they want to reiterate that they do talk to people who reach out. It may not help everybody in need. Here's a stat they told me. They've delivered 3.5 million emails to claimants since the end of last year, along with Facebook and Twitter posts and town halls with 11,000 people. CDLE tells me they're trying to talk with the people, and you can imagine, Kyle, the people who aren't getting the help or the answers through that one of the 3.5 million emails, it just doesn't satisfy them.
If we were not simultaneously in a pandemic with this first-of-a-kind vaccine rollout, what's going on with Colorado's unemployment system would be the #1 story every night, and it would be an enormous scandal.
As someone told me who works for the state, people can live without a vaccine right now. Some people cannot live without their unemployment check.
Yeah. Keep the stories coming. Keep communicating with us on them so that we can continue to shed light onto this. Marshall, thank you. So wish that we had better news about people's attempts to communicate with the unemployment hotline and other resources there, but it does appear that the state has fixed the vaccine information hotline. The governor said that the wait times that we are finding, sometimes around 2 hours to talk to a live person, governor said that was unacceptable. Today, the state came out and said that due to the increased staffing there, they now got 200 people working this call center. They had wait times down to an average of 11 seconds. I wanted to see, so I just called up this afternoon, and the hold message didn't even play all the way through before they connected me with somebody. So, really well done, Colorado. That's very impressive the way that's been fixed. Hey, we're creeping up on 10% of Coloradans with their first dose of the vaccine, 9.7%. It's 556,835 of our neighbors. Inside that 9.7% slice of the pie is the 4% or so who've had both doses. Tonight's next question comes from John in Fort Collins. Want to know if people will be forced to take what John calls the less effective Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Our Steve Steger looked into whether Coloradans can choose which vaccine they want. And Steve has some context about vaccine effectiveness.
Well, you certainly could pick and choose which vaccine you get. Dr. Richard Zane with UC Health says that's a bad idea.
From the perspective of being a patient, I would strongly encourage people to get the first vaccine that they can get.
He says you shouldn't focus on that number that's getting all the attention, that the shot is only 66% effective at preventing moderate cases of the virus. Here are the more important figures.
We see 100% effective at preventing hospitalization and death. You can't get better than that. And 85% effective at preventing severe disease. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is an awesome vaccine. It is unequivocally effective. And from a medical perspective, they are indistinguishable.
With all the information out there about these vaccines, Zane says he expects to see people push back against this one. So public health leaders are getting ready.
We're working with the CDC and with CDPHE to come up with the talking points to really reassure people, and they should be reassured. If you get the chance to get it, I would.
Now, Dr. Zane says it's too early to tell if the J&J vaccine will be as effective against variants, but he says just receiving the shot will make your course of disease a lot better if you do somehow come down with a variant case. I am live. I am not a cat.
This is far better than I even imagined that you would make it. This is absolutely tremendous. And apologies to all of the very confused people who have not been on the internet today. But if you have been on the internet, Steve Steger just won it. Thank you, sir. So our state's Democratic Governor Jared Polis has largely followed the consensus recommendations of public health experts throughout the pandemic, except for, quite notably, when it comes to protecting prisoners and people who are homeless. The governor has repeatedly rejected calls by public health experts to prioritize those high-risk groups for the vaccine. The city of Denver specifically asking the state now to move people who are homeless up the vaccination list. The governor reiterated his opposition to that today, and he added something new, saying that he thinks that people who are homeless should be getting the upcoming one-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Logistically, it will be a lot easier for the needs of the homeless population to use the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is much more effective with one dose than Pfizer or Moderna, which are only somewhat effective with one dose. And being able to track and make sure that people come back 3 to 4 weeks later is a problem across the entire population, but it is an even greater problem among those who lack a regular address.
Denver's Joint Task Force looking at the situation says the hospitalization rate, just generally speaking, for people who are homeless is 3 times higher than that of the general population. The reason why they're trying to get them into a higher tier. Colorado's total COVID-19 hospitalizations under 500 patients and falling. 464 people at last check, down 10 from yesterday, down from 529 patients this time last week. Yesterday, our positivity rate took a jump up to 5.3%. We've been doing better than that. Our weekly average is still down at 4.2%. 3 Aurora police officers not coming back to the force after they were caught mocking the death of Elijah McClain. Their firings were upheld by a board today. Officers Erica Marrero, Kyle Dietrich, and Jason Rosenblatt are now officially gone from DPD. Marrero and Dietrich were fired over this photo, a chokehold, taken near the spot where Elijah McClain was restrained by officers before his death. Third officer in that photo resigned before he was fired. The photo was sent to Officer Rosenblatt, who responded, "Ha ha." Rosenblatt was one of the 3 officers who responded on the night that McClain died, or the night that he was confronted by police in August of 2019. Officers used a carotid hold on him. First responders later gave him ketamine. Elijah McClain went into cardiac arrest and died. Prosecutors have refused to file charges against Rosenblatt and the 2 other officers before McLean's death.
A young congressman from Colorado shines on his biggest stage yet. Even his opponents were like, oh yeah, he did a great job. A Coloradan leans on experience to help her rural community get vaccinated.
If I hadn't done what I've done for the last 40 years with 9 Healthcare, I would not have even thought of taking this on.
What we can all learn from her experience. Next.
Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse from Lafayette is getting a huge stage this week as one of the impeachment managers in former President Trump's trial in the Senate. Neguse got strong reviews for his presentation today on historical examples of government officials being impeached and convicted after they left office. It's not a partisan observation. I mean, the Trump defense team came out to present second and acknowledged, oh, that Democratic team did a really good job. Neguse reminded the senators today that the insurrection was an attack upon them personally.
Like every one of you, I was in the Capitol on January 6th. I was on the floor with lead manager Raskin. Like every one of you, I was evacuated as this violent mob stormed the Capitol's gates. What you experienced that day, what we experienced that day, what our country experienced that day is the framers' worst nightmare come to life.
Former president's defense team is arguing that he is immune from impeachment because he's now out of office. The former president's allies in the Senate even acknowledged today that the defense presentation was a bit incoherent. The trial resumes at 10 o'clock our time tomorrow morning. Hey, former Colorado Senator Cory Gardner has been largely silent on former President Trump's false claims of election fraud and the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, but he's out of office now. But Gardner's talking now. He's asking people to donate to Republican campaigns in his new role leading a political committee, the National Victory Action Fund. Gardner lost a lopsided 9-point race to Democratic challenger John Hickenlooper in November, and he's kicking off his new fundraising role, complaining about money's role in his defeat, saying, quote, "We had far-left groups from out of state saturating the airwaves with millions in television ads years before Election Day. When I finally had enough money to respond in kind, they had already influenced public opinion in a way that was almost impossible to overcome."
In December, there was no real plan for vaccine distribution down in La Plata County.
They wanted to have something to do about this pandemic, but they didn't know what to do or didn't have anything to do.
So a 9 Health Fair volunteer stepped up to kickstart the process. Next.
Look to Colorado's 64 counties, and you'll find 64 approaches to rolling out the COVID-19 vaccine, informed by local needs and by local expertise. Take Karen Zink of La Plata County. She's a certified nurse practitioner who leaned on her experience as a 9 Health Fair volunteer to really get things going down there.
My name is Karen Zink. I'm the co-owner of Southwest Women's Health Associates. I'm a long-time volunteer in the community, especially for 9 Health Fair. I started out drawing blood for the 9 Health Fair. When I knew that vaccines were coming our way, I checked in with our health department. And as you know, there was no plan for distributing the vaccine at that time. We had to write a point of dispensing plan, and there weren't very many of those out there at the time we started. And so our health department director let us go ahead as the 9 Health Fair planning team to see if we could put together a volunteer team to do vaccinations. The volunteers have felt like they wanted to have something to do about this pandemic. We got in touch with a lot of the folks that have volunteered for 9 Health Fair in the past, and we now have over 300 volunteers for this initiative. We had an outpouring of medical volunteers, nurses, doctors, EMTs, eye doctors, veterinarians, dentists. We are using the La Plata County Fairgrounds as our site to host this vaccination clinic at this time. The first day we vaccinated was January 16th, and then subsequently we vaccinated 300, 500, and 620 this past Saturday for a total of 1,540 vaccines given so far. We are scheduling appointments for the vaccinations. We're focusing on 70 plus right now. We have 15 vaccination tables set up, and they're especially loving being vaccinated in this setting. So it's the first time a lot of them have been out of the house. This is a 6-month initiative, and nobody shied away from that. If I hadn't done what I've done for the last 40 years with 9 Health Fair, I would not have even thought of taking this on.
Great hometown effort. Zink shared her perspective with our photojournalist Byron Reed. Zink says folks in La Plata County can sign up for notifications for their weekly vaccinations on the San Juan Basin Public Health website. The most Colorado thing we saw today also represents just about every relationship in the history of ever. We'll show you that and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is that, there's always one person who runs hot in a relationship, another one who runs cold in the relationship. Our weather reveals that in interesting ways around here. Robin and her husband were driving through Longmont when they came up to the intersection. They see this pair walking their dog across the street. Guy's in a t-shirt and shorts, and the woman is in a parka with the hood up, with like the little fuzzy thing on it. Robin said it was about 40 degrees on Saturday when she saw them. I love that. See, he's run hot, she's run cold. You see something that just says Colorado to you, email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag #HeyNext. Juan Soto writes in tonight to say getting people vaccinated is a priority. Getting unemployment assistance to people must be addressed as the highest priority right now. Juan, you make a good point. I mean, the fact is, the state is going to have to be able to do both at once. We're not in a place where we can choose. Both of them are tremendously time sensitive. And the other element, as we talk about this, you want to be fair to all the folks at the state level working on both vaccine distribution and the unemployment system. They both require a high level of coordination with the federal government. In both cases, you've got the federal government giving Colorado something, unemployment funding, and vaccines, and then the state trying to put together a system to get it out quickly and efficiently. Wendy Wagner writes in to say, are you feeling okay? You look really tired tonight. I feel great, Wendy. Thank you. Izzy B says, you're looking a little tired today. Would you all just lay off for a second? Nita writes in to say, Steve Steger's bit with the cat was great. I almost fell out of my chair laughing. Amy wants to know how Steve Steger did it. I'm no catologist. I'm a dog person. I assume he had a treat? I don't know. We'll see you next time.